pretty impressive. So we all must really care about our beautiful Frankfort Harbor. So welcome. And you learn all about and that's actually Andy, you gotta come back. You're bringing people out of the woodwork. This is great. So how many people have never been in our library before?
Oh, that's great.
Welcome. You are in a room that just finished construction less than a year ago. So we got occupancy end of February last year. So this is the most full I've seen it. And maybe we need to build a bigger room. I don't know. I want to thank the Benzie Area Historical Society and Museum for, of course, making this happen today. With special thank you to Andy for making this happen today. And I have a great amount of gratitude that we've filled this room and that we have this space in order to do programs like this. So this will be hopefully the first of many programs like this to come. This is part of the reason why we built this. So you don't want to hear me. I'm gonna turn it over to Andy. One thing I will say to especially of those of you visiting us and the new folks, you can get a library card here. So be sure to stop at the circulation desk on your way out and we'll be happy to set you up with a card. After the presentation, Andy will take some questions. I understand there's maybe some books and things available for, all the things you would come to expect from a lecture like this will be happening afterward. So Andy, take it away.
Thank you. I love the library for one major reason, and they host a newspaper archive on their website, and that's one of our favorite research tools in addition to original sources at the museum. So
their microphones work.
Oh, so I'm gonna project. Yeah. Thank you for being here. I am overwhelmed by the turnout. It's very nice that you're all here, particularly on a beautiful day like this. We do have books for sale. Many of the pictures that you see in this presentation will be in one of those books, and they're out at the desk with Pat out there. So without further ado, I'm going to show you a bunch of pictures. This is Frankfort, and this is 1885, and this is probably peak maritime for the Frankfort Harbor there. So this is the first real map of Betsy Bay. This is 1838. It was a government survey done by Alvin Burt. If you look, you can see that it doesn't look the same as what we see out here. For instance, on the very left side on Lake Michigan, you can see that there's a peninsula, and then Frankfort is separated from that. That gets changed later on, and we'll see some photos of that. Even today, some of the properties that are on that peninsula are attached to Gilmore Township. So this is another map, 1860. What's notable about this one is it shows Frankfort colony lands. So a company called the Frankfort Land Company created Frankfort and improved the harbor so that it could sell property and timber along the Betsy River. Another interesting thing is that the perimeter of Crystal Lake is the original perimeter of Crystal Lake. In the 1870s, they got lowered and it lost volume, and it's well, it made Beulah available, and it made it a nice resort spot. So that's what's unique here. And also see here, we zoom in, we look at the right, and it says Ohio Colony Lands, and that's the people that started Benzonia. So in 1860, there were two groups trying to settle what was now Benzie County, and that's the people from Oberlin College who wanted to create a college in the wilderness, and then the people in Frankfort who were trying to make money off of the lumber along the Betsy River. that lithograph, this is the lithograph at the bottom center of the map. And you can see two piers here. It's on the north side, and the river outlet was approximately where the cannon is now. And it goes through the parking lot for the beach. And then that was changed later on. The little hill with the trees, that's where they say Father Marquette was was located. And on either side of those trees, you see two boats, and that may have been, as far as I know, the only two boats who entered the harbor that way, because the channel that they dug it by hand with wheelbarrows and shovels, and it filled in because the Betsy River pushes silt out, so it collected during that. So it wasn't a great long-term solution. This is a exciting cyanotype here. This is the first image that I know of Native Americans in Benzie County. This is a Odawa family on the island there. They're smoking fish, and this is 1889. And people ask who the first settlers of Benzie County are, and it was the Native Americans. They were here first. So. So this here is a drawing showing the original outlet and the improvement done in 1859. And then on the south side, that's where present channel is going to be. Also to the right, you see that it says Aubessy Lake. That's a French name for the outlet. It was the name of the river, and they also referred to the town as that originally until they picked the name of Frankfort. And instead of digging it by hand, they used this dredge. If you look in the background, you can see a sand dune, and you can see what the original shore looked like. There's a lot of loss along the shore, a lot of erosion of the dunes. And there you can see that the lake goes right up to the bottom of the dunes. Those are the dunes north of Frankfort. And this is them, they were making wooden cribs to make the piers. This is the US government who's marking the channel and improving the harbor. This is an image of the guys filling the cribs with stone. They use limestone from Wisconsin, and you can see there's no cranes here. The men are doing it by hand. Also on the front right, you can see a lady with a parasol, so there's a good contrast of effort. This is a much later image, but it's from 1890, but it shows the original mouth of the river. If you look in between the two schooners in the center of the frame, you see a little sandy thing, and then you see a little tree, and that was an oak tree that a lot of the guys tied their boats up to until they filled it in with the Frontenac in 1902. You can see the island here, and on the shore of the island, you can see the fish houses. The fishermen would have fish houses where they would dry their nets, and also they would put them on reels and fix them up and get them ready to go get put back out into the lake. This is a nice early image. This is from 1868. This is if you were in front of the Garden Theater looking towards the lake from 3rd Street to the. So on the right, there's been a hotel at the corner of 3rd and Main on that northwest corner since 1868. And then I don't know how many of you would remember the Park Hotel, but in the center of this, they have a little cupola on top of the building. That's the Delbridge House, and that became the Park Hotel. Now, the next few images, they're going to be part of a panorama, and I'll try to orient you. The nice thing about doing it here at this location is that there was a building, there was a sawmill at this location, and it's really easy to orient yourself in some of the older pictures because you know where 7th Street and Main Street is. This is looking towards Lake Michigan from Leelanau Avenue, and you can see the hotel with the little cupola at the top. And on the left, you can see the island start to form. And there weren't a lot of houses. It wasn't really built up, but you can see they partitioned the blocks with fences. We'll move on to the next block. This is from 3rd, 3rd to 4th Street. On the right-hand side, you see the island there. And then you can see the harbor. There's a channel there, and then you can see a thin line where the horizon is on the lake. There's no life-saving station yet. There's no Coast Guard or anything like that. It's very flat, and you're going to see lots of stumps. There are some in here. You're going to see a lot more. This one here, this is, again, in 1870, 4th to 5th Street. This way you look across the bay, which is real nice. On the left, you can see the ironworks. So we're going to get a closer look at that in the near future. But you can see the houses, they're very clean, and they're very similar because the people who built the houses, they knew how to build one kind of house pretty much, unless they brought outside people in. This is from 1870 again, 5th to 6th Street. The house in the front and center is fancy. It is not like the other houses. It is the land company house. It is on Leelanau Avenue. Some of you may recognize it. It's moved around a little bit, but still there. And that's where the agent for the land company lived. He was in charge of selling all the property along the Betsy River. All right, and this is looking straight on down 7th Street. On the left-hand side behind the White House, that's the land company mill, later the Butler Mill. And that's where this library is, essentially, the lumber yard and the building. And so you can kind of tell, you can also see across the harbor, well, not now, but there's the ironworks. They're going in full blast with all the smoke and everything. And on the right-hand side, that black building, that was called the Beehive. It was an overflow school. But we're going to see some other schools that were built in the area too, but they really didn't have a school until about 1870. They were teaching in either a business or a home. And this is looking from 7th Street to 8th Street. You can see the houses, but you notice there's a lot of trees there. I want you to think about how dense all those trees are. That's virgin forest there. And this is taken in 1870. And then the next slide, that's from 1890, looking from where the gateway is. You can see a lot of stumps there and not a lot of trees. That was mostly due to the ironworks. It used a lot of hardwood to make charcoal to smelt the iron. So there's a big old stump in the front left for sure. Alrighty, and then going back to that, this is I zoomed in on that so you can see there's the ore house with all the doors there. You can see the smoke. You can see 2 houses to the right of the ironworks there. And that was for the Anderson and Blacklock families. Anderson was the manager of the works, and Blacklock was the lead blacksmith. And to the left of that, that's where the 20 charcoal kilns were. We'll see those later. Here's a closer look. Ore house is in the front. For scale, you can see the guys lounging against the building. This was taken July 1st, 1870. This is the first day of operation. So what they would do is they would get the iron ore from the UP, and then they would heat it up with the charcoal, and they would add some limestone into it, and then they would create pig iron. And they called it pig iron because when they would let it cool, they poured it in these little bars, these little ingots, and they all had this little tail going together, and it looked like a bunch of little pigs waiting for mom. So that's why it's called pig iron. This is another view. This is a profile, and you can see the Anderson and Blacklock houses to the right of the furnace there, the blast furnace. And on the left front, those are the charcoal kilns in the wood yard, and they used 4-foot cordwood, hardwood, usually beech, that was preferred, and anything oily. So that ran for 13 years, and it ate up all the wood from about Lobb Road down to Sliverville Road to, well, the Frankfort. They had a little train. They had an upright steam engine that ran, and then that also got moved around the county. They reused it. But and they also even got wood from the Platte River and all the way up in Leelanau. So they've shipped in all this iron ore from the UP, and one of those boats was the Hartzell. And it came in, and this is from 1880. It's a little famous case, local lore. They got there early and they had to wait because nobody was there to tie them up to the dock. So they waited outside the piers, and well, then a storm came, which was unfortunate for them. And they then got caught on the beach on a sandbar, and then that wrecked the boat. So the nearest life-saving station was at Point Betsy. And they had to walk all the way around Betsy Bay, about 7 miles, to where Grace Road meets the lake, essentially. And they saved all of the guys, but there was one lady who they weren't able to bring to the shore using a life car, and that was Lydia Dale. And it was a big sad story because they saved everyone but the one woman who was delirious from sickness who couldn't come in. And there's a movie about it too. But because of that, they decided to give a life-saving station in Frankfort on the south side of the channel so that they didn't have to go the whole 7 miles around again. And this is later, this is about 1910. And this is a life-saving station. 1915, it became part of the Coast Guard with the revenue cutter service. I like this picture because there are men in a boat and there's a man on watch on the roof. And this is on the Alberta side, even though it's called the Frankfort Life-Saving Station. It didn't move over to the Frankfort side until 1935. This is a little later. This is, I need to find myself here. This is from 1875, and it's the Park Hotel with the roof, the hotel with the little cupola at the top. They expanded. Above that hotel, you can see the Pierhead Lighthouse. On the end of the pier is on the South Pier. And you can see there's more houses. Some of the trees they planted are getting bigger, but there's still not a lot of people, and the island still has trees on it. This photo is from about 1883 when they stopped using the ironworks, but it just shows you just how big of an operation it was. And South Frankfort, as it was known back then, or Alberta as we know now, had a lot of people that worked in that neighborhood. If you go down Furnace Street, if you go past the cabbage shed, and there's some houses right there, those are the people that worked in the ironworks. They were working families. They had a lot of boarders in their homes. The houses aren't big, but they would have up to 15 people in their homes on the census. So they really packed them in there.
Why did it go away?
They ran out of wood. Money.
They brought them down. Isn't they bring wood down the river?
I'll take questions at the end too. I can talk about this all day. This picture is from 1885. This is Butler's Mill. The boat that's in front of the sawmill there, that's tied up to the dock, that's the Gretwick. There were two boats, the Gretwick and the Friar, and they would tow 2 schooners, and they would load themselves with white pine from the Butler Mill, and they would take it all the way to Tonawanda, New York, which is all the way out there. But that's because the people that owned all the lumber were people that lived in New York. Also in this picture, you see 2 derricks, and there was not oil in Frankfort, no. They were trying to duplicate the salt mine success that they had in Manistee, but there's no salt here. What we got stuck with was the mineral well, and we're lucky that we have it now, and it's not as pungent as it was originally. It smelled like rotten eggs all over the place. Here's another picture. You see another derrick. They put several wells down, but we just have the one now today. The pictures on the left with the 2 belfries there, that's the school. That's on 7th Street. It was built in 1868. It wasn't just the school. Sorry. It wasn't just the school. It also served as the county seat. It served as county normal for training teachers, and it served as a civic room too. They had scouts and everything like that there too. Here's some pictures of the mineral well on the left. That's an earlier one. I like the ducks. That's why I like that photo. And the one on the right, you can see the sawmill in the background. That's a little bit later. That's about 1900. Now they just didn't look at the mineral spring. They bottled the water because they was considered a healthy thing to drink. And they also had a mineral bath when they built the Hotel Frontenac. That building is the American Legion Hall, but it was relocated well after the Frontenac burned down. So here's the Gratwick Andor fire and the tows, and this is just to give you an idea of how big a deal it was to cut all this pine. They cut the white pine from about 1880 to about 1890, and this is like hundreds of millions of board feet as they measured it. And so a lot of houses in New York, Boston, they're built out of trees that came here. This is what the Butler lumberyard looked like. And this isn't even a big one. If you go down to Manistee, they had really big ones, but this is the Butler. And where was that? That was right, open space park, right where you parked your car. All along the shore on the south side here, on this, going all the way back to where Lutke's dock is, that was lumber yards. Either a sawmill or they would make furniture or they cut trees down. This mill, this was on the south side. This is the Banks Mill. If you know where the cabbage shed is, it's right behind the cabbage shed next to the water. Interesting thing here is you can see the schooner at the dock behind it. And you also, if you look at the roof of the mill, they have these barrels full of water, which are supposed to stop fires, but you know, everything burned. It didn't work. So. Now this is a really special picture. This is looking at the Betsy River coming into the bay here, where the bridge is now, going from between Frankfort and Alberta. And if you look, you can see these little posts coming up out of the water, and there's guys standing on those posts. Their job was to look at the logs that were coming down the river, and then they would sort it by the people who owned the lumber. They would stamp their symbol into it. And then they would look at the symbol and then know that, well, that went to the Butler Mill, or that goes to the Banks Mill, that goes to the Crane Mill. So they would then put that in the mill pond, and then the mills would cut it up. There's another view of the, we call it the sorting gap, where the lumber was sorted and sent to the mills. On the left-hand side, that's a very early image of a bridge that between Frankfort and Alberta. They've improved it since this time. Also, the white building in the center, that was the Frankfort School, which was built in 1870, Alberta High School, as you might know it. This is the Crane Mill, again with the ineffective cast on the roof, you know. But just I like the mill crew pictures because they're very sure of themselves in these photographs. They have a lot of gravitas. But Crane is a big hero because he essentially built Alberta. He came here from Ireland in 1850, got here and worked for the Frankfort Land Company at first. He cleared out the Betsy River so logs could come down it. And then over the county, he built about 8 different sawmills, from just not here, but also in Homestead and everywhere else. So, and he died, he was a lumber baron, and he was self-made and pretty impressive. He was reputed to be able to look inside a log without cutting it open and know what's inside of it, as far as how to cut the boards and everything like that. So, and this is a picture of his dock. The school's there in the background again. For scale, look at the front on the left, and you can see those 2 men there. And that's a lot of trees that are no longer trees. On the right-hand side, on this, that's the Banks Mill there to show you perspective. Crane built this mill out in the water, and you can still see some of the pilings out in the water, the ones that are all askew sticking out. So if you're having a drink at the cabbage shed, look to your right, and you can see it. Impress your friends. This is called Robar's Landing, and this is in Alberta. This is where Crapo would meet the bay essentially, and they have something called tan bark, which is hemlock bark, and they would ship the hemlock bark off to different places because, you know, Chicago they had all these slaughterhouses. Well, they needed something to tan the hides with, and it was hemlock bark that they used for a time. Oh, this is nice. This is about 1890. These craft are probably drying their sails in the sun. But it's a nice image of you forget that big ships were here. And I think it's an important part of the history just to know we're lucky to have the bay that we have because they built it for this industry, but we still have a benefit from that effort. More boats. Behind the one on the front boat on the left, you can see on the top of the hill, there's a tank. That's the water tank. They called it Tank Hill. And it was 4th Street. So if you're ever looking at an old photo and you see that, that's another thing. Also right here, 1892. Very important day because that's when the car ferry service for the Ann Arbor Railroad began. This is the first image that I know of a car ferry in Alberta at dock. This is before it went to Kewanee. This is looking from the Alberta side to the Frankfort side. In the center, you can see on the Frankfort shore, you can see the big high school that was built in 1894. That helps you date this photo. If you look on the near shore, you see a bunch of rail cars and some boats. Those boats are loading tan bark. And if you look on the left, you can see the roundhouse. So that's where Waterfront Park is now. This is a perspective over that area. Hey, I like this one. This is about 1905. It's a Royal Frontenac Hotel. It was a very fancy hotel. It had 200 rooms. Each room had its own telephone. In 1902, that was a big deal. It also had boats from Chicago come to it. The white boat, that is called the Northland. It had a very unlucky sister ship. And on the left, those 2 tall towers, those are the tallest buildings in the history of Benzie County. They are the grain elevators for the Ann Arbor Railroad. And you can see the car ferry loading with the switch engine in the center. So over time, they improved how they were able to dig channels and maintain the harbor. Every other year or something like that, they'd have to deepen it because of the silt from the Slow River. Betsy River is a slow river. And so this is one of the Corps of Engineers boats, probably from 1905. You see the hotel in the background, and they called it a sandsucker. This map is very nice. It's a 1904 Corps of Engineers map. If you want to get a closer look, it's in the reading room of the library there on the west wall. And it shows the depths and it shows the lights on the south pier. That later changed in 1912 where the pierhead lighthouse moved to the north pier. And then this happened. I'm going to do a quick plug. Next month, February 9th at 4 p.m. at the Mills Community House. Very good, intelligent man, Tim Foster, he's going to do a talk about the sinking of the Ann Arbor No. 4 in 1923. This event was, well, this photographed here, but also the mural in the post office here depicts that event as well. So if you have any interest, he's the guy to get it from, get that information from. So because the boat didn't make it through that channel, they decided, well, we got to do something to improve the harbor. So they added these, they call them arrowhead breakwaters, but really it keeps the waves from going into the pier and pushing, and it keeps the ice out of the channel there. So This was built in 35. It's the one we still have. We still have the Pierhead Lighthouse on the north pier there. This is what it looks like, somewhat familiar. There's a car ferry in that photo. I believe that's City of Milwaukee there. And the asphalt tanks are there. And it's really nice. And this is what it looks like today. Well, not today, but you know what I mean. I'm really excited everybody's here. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm ready to take them now. Yes, ma'am.
Along Alberta, there were ladies of the evening home. Is that true?
I cannot personally say anything to that. Not currently. I own one of those homes. Yes, sir.
The last map shows that these two bridges across the bottom of Betsy Bay.
That's true. Well, that was a railroad bridge. So one was for the trains and one was for the cars. So it's still there. We just walk all over it. It's part of the trail. So, yeah.
We live off of Bellows and my parents bought it 68 years ago. There was a pool with cable about this big and it had been clear cut. Would it have been during that era? And they.
I don't know. They cut.
Go as far as Bellows?
Oh, they went as far as they could. I mean, I don't know about that direction. We don't have a lot of photos there. That's pretty much what I base my information on. So, but it could be. Yeah. Yes. Correct. That's good. From now on, I will do that. Yes.
For the smelting, where did they get the limestone?
The question is for the smelting at the ironworks, where did they get the limestone? They got it from the UP ports too.
Oh, so
So,
they shipped in that as well.
yep, they one-stop shopping. Yes, ma'am.
The Hotel Frankfort.
Oh, well. Question is, how long did the Royal Frontenac Hotel exist and what caused the fire? Well, the hotel is kind of unlucky. They were building it in 1901 and a storm blew it down. So that was just a bad start. They finished it in 1902 and then it burned in January of 1912. So that's about 10 years, right? As far as what caused it, a lot of conjecture about that. Some people think they talked about hobos a lot, staying places and setting fires. So that was one thing. Or there's just an arsonist running around town. I don't think it was anything that devious. I think everything was made out of wood. It just burned. And if it's vacant and nobody's in there, if somebody smokes in there, that's enough to set the whole thing up. So, yes.
Why didn't they rebuild it?
Why didn't they rebuild it? Because it probably was not cost effective. They built it to try to. I'm going to try to keep it concise. The Ann Arbor Railroad built it to try to drive up passenger traffic on the railroad so that they could make money aside from hauling freight. And they did it for 10 years and it was kind of okay. It started out, they wanted to like compete with the Grand Hotel and everything like that. And then halfway after a few years, they're like, we're going to go business class. And then they're like, well, we really just having a hard time. Another hard thing is that the county went dry in 1910. So that may have helped. That didn't keep the rabbis from coming though. They came every year until they couldn't. So, yes.
There are reasons down the trees on Alberta Hill.
Is there a reason they didn't cut down the trees on the Alberta hills? They did. They cut everything. I mean, maybe just for fun, who knows? But they no, we have photos around 1892 and those hills are bald. So I'm not going to be able to find it right now that I'm looking, but and also not all trees are as economically viable as others. Pine, very very easy to sell. But if you get some of the hardwoods, unless you're turning it to charcoal, it's not really desirable. So some lots were left for a little bit longer, but as far as I know, there's no virgin forest in Benzie County. There's no virgin forest in the Lower Peninsula. The nearest one is in Porcupine Mountains. So they cut everything. Yeah, it fell down though.
Also, at Interlochen State Park.
That fell down too. Yeah. Well, it's also hard. It's one thing to have a virgin forest, but the whole biosphere is different too. So like it's complex. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes.
In 1971, a very dense fog during the day, and my mother and I went out on the Coast Guard break wall. And because we heard the car ferry coming in, and the fog horn going, and we took a tape recorder out, and all of a sudden the car ferry came out of the fog right in front of us, and the crew member on board shouted, "Jump back, we're going to hit." And so we got that on the tape.
Oh, wow, that's fun.
Did hit all the way along their street.
Well, that's not, they hit things. They were running every day for 90 years. The wooden boats would bounce off, the steel ones, not so much, so. Yes,
That the large Coast Guard saving building had been hauled from Chicago.
well, the question is if the Coast Guard building was relocated from Chicago. Not the actual building, they had a surplus lightkeeper's house in Chicago, I think on Water Street, if I remember correctly. And then they put it on a barge and brought it up here as extra housing, so. Yes, sir.
Didn't notice any cranes on any of those lumber mills by the boats either. Did they hand load all those boards on those boats?
Well, the question is how did they load the wood onto the boats at the lumber yards? Labor was very cheap and there was no safety conscience at all. So there are so many accidents in the newspaper of people getting crushed, saws coming off the blades bouncing around the building. I mean, it's just people getting hit by tree limbs. It was not safe for these men and they were cheap to be had. So no, now it would be nice if they had cranes and all that, you know. Yes.
You mentioned posts in the bay. If you're near the rail trailhead in Alberta, there are metal posts sticking out of the water. What those the posts the people looking for logs would stand on?
I don't believe so. I believe that they stood on wooden posts, and I think what they're talking about, it's the old marina, which is right next to the intersection with Frankfort Avenue, right when you get into Alberta. On the right hand side, that was part of a marina, I believe. Yes.
They get the wood down the Betsy River, it's not very deep.
Well, they cheated. So not every wood floats. So but pine does pretty well. And then so they would cut these logs, and most of it would be around Interlochen, Green Lake, Duck Lake, and then they would dam the outlet to that body of water, and they would go up a few feet, and then they would put their logs in there, and then they would flush it down so that it would push it through. So, and that would take about 3 days, I think, that part of the drive. So they didn't do that after the railroads came in 1890. So, but are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Have you heard anything about Leo DeLong and his operation?
Leo DeLong pulling deadheads out of the river. We have some photos at the museum about him pulling deadheads. So some of the logs didn't float so good and they got stuck in the river. And Leo DeLong had a little apparatus he built and he would pull them out of the riverbed. And that happened not just once, but twice, because one of the crane boys did that as well. So that's there's probably still a lot of logs in the river. When they got rid of some of the bridges and they put in the, I'm forgetting what it's called, culverts. and when they moved that soil around, there's a lot of logs that were pulled out during that, and big logs too. And whenever they changed that, the road commission cut off some ends and gave us those ends, and they're in the museum today, so. Any other questions? Yes, whoever's symbol is stamped on them, even to this day. They had to register in each county their symbol. So people would cut the ends off, but that was illegal. So. What?
My logs are all 8 foot.
Yeah, they tried to keep all the law, yeah.
I heard that there was a road around Crystal Lake. My brother has a cottage that's not far from Bolander Road, and I heard there was a road all around there, there's a lake.
I don't know, that's not, I don't really know that answer, unfortunately. There's lots of roads. Any other questions?
Are you native of the area here?
No, I got here in 2015. I moved up here from Ann Arbor. I'm a disabled veteran, so I don't have a job, and so I annoy people at the Historical Society, and they let me keep coming. So.
Another question from the chat. Wasn't there a cherry factory on the bay at one point?
Yes, there was a cherry. There's lots of fruit processing plants on the harbor because that's where the terminus of the railroad was. And the one I think most people think of is if you look across the bay towards Alberta, you see a smokestack. That was from the Alberta Packing Company. And they were active during around World War II, that kind of era. And it burned too, so. All right, if you have any more questions, I'm gonna hang around for a little bit, or you can always contact me at the museum, okay? Thank you for coming.